The Finger Lakes for a long time has really been all about collaboration and working together. There's a phrase always passed around, the rising tide raises all ships. So that's kind of the idea with the Finger Lakes wineries, or even not just like the wineries, even cideries, breweries, distilleries, all the kind of craft beverage in the Finger Lakes. Everyone's working together to make the region as a whole look good and do good, so that we all can improve together.
Welcome to Well Said Finger Lakes, the podcast where we speak with businesses, organizations, and interesting people from in and around the Finger Lakes region of New York State. My name is Jeremiah Craig, and I'm the host. We are here in the live room at Well Said Media in Ithaca, New York. And our guest today on this episode is Noah Bassette from Airy Acres Vineyard in Interlaken, New York. Thanks for joining us, Noah. How's it going?
Good. Thanks for having me, Jeremiah. I'm happy to be here. My first time at Well Said Media, but it's going to be a fun time. We've got a great spot here.
Yes, looking forward to it. I'm kind of interested in starting out at a very basic thing, and then we can move from there. And I just want to know, what is your starting point in Finger Lakes wine?
What is my personal starting point? Well, I got into it because of my family planting the vineyard. So we planted the vineyard in 2015 on the property that my parents inherited from my grandparents. So that was kind of hey, we're going to grow grapes now. This is going to be fun. At the same time, I was getting out of the Navy. I was in the Navy for 5 years, and so I was moving back into the area. I'm like, I need a job to pay the bills because that's important. And vineyards, they don't typically, you're not going to get a harvest for till 3 years later. So I needed something for the moment to have a job. And I'm like, well, we're growing vines, so let's go work in a tasting room. So I started working actually at Lamoureux Landing Wine Cellars. And that's when it went all downhill from there. No, that's when I got bit from the wine bug, as I like to say it. But so that's where I got started, and now we're starting the vineyard.
That's great. And so the property where you have the vineyard was your grandparents. Can you tell me a little bit about that? And I remember I visited on Friday, of course. Mm-hmm. So you have the old house that you're renovating there for the new tasting room as well. Yep. Can you sort of tell me about the history of the land where the vineyard is now?
Oh, yeah, happy to. How long do you got? No. So the vineyard started, like I said, in 2015, but the property has been in the family since 1918.
Wow.
My great-grandparents, they originally bought the property there on Foots Corners Road. It's the 1840s farmhouse, and then at the time it was like 20, 30 acres of land with it. And they actually bought it from the house next door. So they were next door, and then right up the road. So my family had been in the area for generations before that even already. But so they bought the property in 1918. So then my grandmother grew up in that farmhouse. My father grew up in the farmhouse. And for the time before we started the vineyard, my grandfather, he had a chicken farm on the property for a while. He built a grass runway on the property in the 1950s that he called Airy Acres Airport, and that's where we got the name for the vineyard.
So actual planes would land on this property.
Mm-hmm. It was a private little grass runway, so really just him and friends and people he knew, but it was fully operational. He would, most notably, he'd fly to like Canada and Alaska to go fishing. That was his big thing. But so we have the property from all that, and then that farmhouse that we're renovating now, old 1840s farmhouse, we believe was from a Mr. Foots that was originally built that house in the 1840s, and that's why that road is called Foots Corners Road, because it was on the corner there.
Yeah.
So he built it, but now we're renovating that to be the full-time tasting room, which we're excited about. It was an old house, so a lot of work had to go into it, but we're keeping as much as we can. One big thing is the original stairway we're keeping, which you saw that it's curved up at the top. It's really fun. So that we're able to keep, and a couple other things. And the bones of the house are still the same thing. We have, the physical structure is there, but we also have the memories that we had, not only from my dad growing up there, but then even though my hometown was Honeyway Falls, because my dad worked at Kodak for 33 years, so we lived closer to Rochester because of that. But I would still, as a family, would spend time with the grandparents there in Interlaken. We had some land by the lake there, actually right by the cider house. And so we'd spend a lot of time, especially in the summer, there. So I have memories of the different rooms, and then now, like when I was with you the other day, it's like we walk into one of the rooms and like, well, this used to be the living room, and now it's going to be the tasting room. Upstairs, that used to be where the room where me and my brother would sleep if we'd stay over, but now it's going to be more tasting space. Like it's a whole thing. The house has a lot of history and story with it, and now we're on to the next step.
Wow, that is so special to keep something like that you grew up with and see it change for the future. How do you think your grandparents would see how you're changing the house and bringing it forward into this new venture with wine?
Well, I know they'd love it, short answer. But we even had a discussion like that when we were first deciding when we had decided that we were going to make wine. All right, well, now we need to have a tasting room. So where's it going to be? That was a whole nother long discussion. But one of the talking points was, what would Grandma Betty, what would she think of us turning her house into a tasting room? And we took some time to think about it and dwell on it. And we're like, you know what? Like, she'd love it. If she walked in the door right now, she'd be like, this is awesome. This would be so much fun. She would be happy about everything because she'd be happy that the land is getting used for something new and exciting. It's not just, we're not going to waste, but it's the family is still using it. The family's still here. And that's, she would love it.
Yeah. That's really special to carry something on through your family that's kind of reshaping for the next generation and the generations to come. I think that's really cool.
And
please go ahead.
And one more quick thing on that. Already for the next generation, because my sister's kids, my sister's house is sort of on the property, but not. It's basically on the property. And her kids are already, like Peter and Lydia, they're helping out, tying down and doing pruning and all that. So they're already helping. I mean, who knows how much they'll help in the future, because they might want to go to college, and that's fine. It's great, whatever they want. But they're already helping. They're already part of it, which is great.
And it's exposing them to possibilities and just helping out in the family business.
Right, for sure.
That's so special. You mentioned that the Airy Acres name came from the fact that your grandfather flew planes, and there was a runway right there on the property. How big was the runway? Was it like a really long, like from one side of the vineyard to the other side of the vineyard, or what was that like?
I mean, so it's considered a short runway if you're comparing it to other runways. I mean, it's still big if you think about it as if we stand on either end, you'd have to shout to, it might not even be heard then. It takes up, so where my parents' house is now, their driveway kind of cuts the runway in half.
Gotcha.
And so we have vines on one half of that section, at least right now. Eventually we'll plan out more of it. But it's, it would be considered a short runway. The people that we've had land on it most recently, because for a while it wasn't being used, because, when my grandfather passed away, so he wasn't using it, and my grandmother, she wasn't using it. So for a while it wasn't being used, but then once the vineyard operations, for lack of a better term, started coming up, and we're getting more people interested, and we had some friends that live down in Pennsylvania that they flew up and they landed in July. So, but he was familiar with landing on an airfield of that size because he used to live in Alaska. So he's used to not usual runways to land on. I don't know the exact distance off the exact length off the top of my head. I should probably go find that stat out. But yeah.
That's really cool that there was an actual runway on the vineyard where it is now. Perfect naming for it. The story behind the whole vineyard is really special. You have the new tasting room that's nearly complete. You said around June or July?
May or June, yeah.
Yeah, well, so it's almost done.
Yeah.
What's next when the tasting room is done for Airy Acres?
Well, there's always lots to happen next. So yeah, the big focus is on the tasting room right now. When that's finished, we'll have a deck on there. We'll have music on there. You're gonna come play.
Yes, looking forward to it.
That's gonna be fun. So definitely getting the tasting room solidified and all that going. But even then, we have a wine club. So one of the big things about having that space that's going to be nice is to be able to do wine club member events and different kinds of tastings there. That's going to be great. Even in The most immediate future, the next couple of years, the big thing is like, all right, we have the tasting room. Now let's like get more options for events at the tasting room. So really fleshing that out more. We have a kitchen that we're going to put in that we don't plan on using this first year. Like, let's just get people into our first. We'll go from there. But I'm planning on over the course of the winter, this next winter, we'll start getting the kitchen running, figuring that out. Already thinking of fun ideas of like having food available, but having a twist on it because it's like, we don't know what we're doing. Like, we're trying it out. We're trying this new thing. Come try some random food we're going to try out, over the winter. But so definitely kind of fleshing out all those options. And then, I mean, as always, there's more vines to plant. There is more fun things to do with wine. Eventually, this is looking to be more like 10 years down the road, but we'll probably build a production space across the street that we have some property there. So we'll take down an old cooper shed and put in a production building there. So yeah, lots of stuff.
Lots of stuff to do, and it also sounds like there's lots of different responsibilities in all of those things that you are in charge of, and that's just like small business all around. So what are some of the things that you have to do, from like booking music to figuring out what foods to figuring out when to make the wine, or how to blend the wine? How many things do you do at Airy Acres?
Too many things. I mean, like any small business or any farm winery, new business getting started, everyone has many hats. I mean, it's not just me. Obviously, that's the whole family working at it. So, like for me, like I am the sales and marketing director, whatever that means. I'm the tasting room manager, the wine club manager, and then I'm assisting in the winemaking process. Quick note on that. I don't know if you have a question for me, but I'll jump into it right now already. Technically, the wine isn't made all on site yet. We work with a winery up the road from us to make the wine. It's a wonderful blend of not all me and not all them. They do a lot of work for sure, and they're very helpful with everything. I'm kind of apprenticing and learning some of the winemaking there. While with that, and with my already previous experience with other wineries I've worked at, but we're kind of working with all that together. Basically, how that kind of looks like is in right before harvest. I'll go down there. I'll have a meeting with them. We'll kind of plan out, hey, these are the wines we're planning on making. This is roughly the sugar level, the acidity, like all that stats we're looking at. And then as harvest goes, they kind of have the blueprint to run on so they can start fermenting things until nothing's holding up the process. But then once that's started, like I'll come in every so often, I'll do tastings to see how the wine is, and we'll talk about it, and just all those different steps throughout the whole process until it's bottles. Like most recently, we've been doing the blending trials for the whites. I mean, what that meant for me is I took a bottle home each of the wine of the whites that we're making, and I started blending them all with the different measurements and the beakers and all that kind of stuff, and then go from there. So that's the winemaking side of things. But then even everyone else at the family has other hats as well. Like my dad, I mean, he was pretty much the main vineyard manager, but he thankfully, my brother-in-law and sister, they moved up from New Jersey a year and a half ago, and so now they're taking over vineyard management. So that's great. So my dad can now, I mean, while he was doing vineyard management before, he was also doing a lot of the paperwork and the behind the scenes. Me and him worked on making the labels, but he would like fill out all the paperwork for that, all the paperwork for everything that you have to have a business run with, So he has many hats with that, and he's also been working with getting the word out. Everybody has many things that they're doing. Me included, the whole family included.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I got a couple of things that I want to follow up with on all of those things that you mentioned. It sounds like you guys are super busy there. And speaking of the paperwork aspects, going to that first, I noticed, and you showed off the sustainability badge that you guys have from New York State now.
Yep.
Can you tell me about the process of applying for that, getting approved for it, and what it actually means when somebody drives up to Airy Acres and sees that sustainability badge that you have?
Yeah, so we're really excited about that, really proud of that. We're one of, it's like maybe 70 vineyards, because it's on the viticulture side of things.
Okay.
70-ish vineyards in the Finger Lakes, or I think it might be all in New York State. anyways, that have that sustainability certification, which is great.
What is the actual title? I don't know. I don't remember what it is. What is the actual title of the sustainability badge that you have?
It's like New York State Certified Sustainable Wine Growing, I think is the term they use.
Okay, wow.
It's on the I mean, good wine comes from good grapes, So, vineyard and winemaking, there's that connection. But it is focused on that viticulture side of things, the growing the grapes. It's focused on between the sprays that we use, if we have any kind of chemicals, how they're stored, and I was just like the whole laundry list of the different things that they check when they checked everything. But what it really kind of boils down to is making sure that the vineyard, their practices for taking care of the land is in a sustainable way, kind of in a way that promotes the environment that they're working in, because we want to be stewards of the land. We are, taking care of the vineyard and the land that we have here for more than just us here. We don't want to just kind of rip through and make really good fruit, but then there's no health left in the ground afterwards. You want to take care of the land because it'll take care of us. So that's kind of and that's more of the bigger picture of the sustainability, is like you want to do it in a good way. And kind of the certification is really just certifying that we're doing it in that positive, sustainable way, which really, if you talk to most vineyards around here, they've been kind of doing it in that way already. This is just the first time that New York's been able to get it certified. And when, the New York Wine and Grape Foundation are the ones who do the certification, so they'll know all the very specific answers to some questions. But they got, if I remember correctly, they got some organizers from California that had done this already for vineyards out in California, and they had brought them to New York State, and they kind of helped with getting the certification program going, and even came out for some of the visits for the certification, for checking everything. So it wasn't like we just made it up out of thin air. They got some people with the programs already in other states to help them get it going. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's really interesting, because it's a very popular and trendy thing to be sustainable,
right,
over the past 10 years, but and into the future, and sometimes it feels like a little too trendy, but this is
right.
True, like, sustainability. People have been doing this anyways, so this is New York just saying, okay, you're certified now,
right.
and and this is what you can use for your marketing and
exactly
and things like that.
Right, yeah. Like I said, many vineyards have been doing this already. This is really New York. Like, hey, let's actually get an official certification for it, and have it be a real thing. Because it was a while. It was a bit ago when they did ours, but it was just like, yeah, of course we're gonna do it this way, or the store that way. Like, it just makes sense, But it's actually getting the certification down. And making sure that we're doing a good job of being stewards of the land.
Yes, yeah. I love it. And speaking of being good stewards of the land, and also what you had mentioned before by working with another winery on your wines, I want to talk about the collaborative essence of Finger Lakes wine, because it seems like everybody is in it for each other. Mm-hmm. Could you tell me a little bit about your experience with working with other wineries in the Finger Lakes region, and how collaborative versus how competitive it is?
Mm-hmm. Sure, definitely. Yep. So in one way, like, yes, all the wineries, they're their own business. They want to, they want to make money so they can make more wine. Like, it's a whole thing. Their business is. So in that sense, there is at least some competition, obviously. But the Finger Lakes for a long time has really been all about collaboration and working together. There's a phrase always passed around, the rising tide raises all ships. So that's kind of the idea with the Finger Lakes wineries, and even not just like the wineries, even cideries, breweries, distilleries, all the kind of craft beverage in the Finger Lakes. Everyone's working together to make the region as a whole look good and do good, so that we all can improve together. And more of my hands-on experience, talking about the vineyard side of things, like our neighbors are Sunrise Hill Vineyards, and all the time we're either, hey, we're gonna spray your vines for you, and then we'll borrow you a tractor for something like that. Like, we'll trade favors, or we'll help you out, or even, not even trade favors, even just like, hey, you need something, I got you. I know what was it? It was back with the May 18 frost from last year.
Wow.
There was right after that happened, Cornell came out with they were like, hey, there's this certain spray that you can use that might help revitalize your vines and get them a better chance of them recovering, potentially. It's seen at least, I don't know what the percentage was, but like 30% better chance of doing better. And, everyone after that frost was really like, we need to get whatever we can get out of these vines. So I know that they had a big meeting and they had a bunch of stock of the powder to use to combine with water to make the spray. And so like my dad got a bunch for the couple of the people around. Like I know, because just like not everyone could go, so I'm going to grab some for our neighbors and then we can do that. It's that kind of stuff. Like we're all working together, helping each other. As best we can. I know even too kind of on the winemaking side of things, like I'll go, if we're making wine, of course, making wine at another winery, obviously I'll be interacting with the winemakers there, so we'll talk, of course, but even after that, like I'll get a tank sample and I'll take it to my friends at another winery and be like, hey, what do you think of this? What would you do? Good, bad, criticism, whatever, and that's, I don't know, that's not unique to me, that's anybody in the Finger Lakes. They're going to be like, hey, let's go talk to my, in a way, coworker. That's another winemaker at another winery, but we're still considered, peers. Let's all work together. And also because even too, with the winemaking side of thing, like, yes, everyone's going to make a Riesling, everyone's going to make a Cab Franc, but there's always those little things that people are doing differently, and it helps to have your peers help you out with it, Like, for example, I'm going to be crazy. I don't know. If someone else has done it, I'd love to know so I could ask their tips on it. But I'm thinking of making a white wine out of Lemberger, which is really relatively unusual. And so I'll probably be, like, that's going to be a test run, trial run. When I make that, I'll probably ask everybody I know, hey, how's this taste? Is this doing all right? Should I do something differently? What's going on here? Because, there's a lot to know about, well, everything, but especially with winemaking. And I will happily be first to admit that I don't know a lot about it. I know enough to get going, but, we're still getting help along the way. So
yeah, and how you work with people and collaborate and, run ideas past people is how you learn even more.
Right.
At the same time, I'm going to look forward to trying that white Lemberger. That's going to be super interesting. I'm really excited about that. If I could go back to the mention of the May 18th frost from last year, I had heard about it. Everybody in the Finger Lakes wine.
It was like national news, I think, at one point.
It was devastating. I know, especially to a lot of the cideries, too, who some of them didn't even have any harvest. But we heard about that when we had Nancy on from Bet the Farm on this podcast. But I didn't know that Cornell supplied special sprays. Was there any testing on vines on your vineyard, on ones that you sprayed it with and the ones that you didn't spray with, and you saw more or less? Like, what was the results if you had an A/B testing available?
That's a great question, and in hindsight, we probably should have done that just for fun, at least, even if we did like a couple plants not sprayed. We just sprayed them all, because we just,
fair enough,
do whatever we could,
exactly.
Kind of thing. And it wasn't. I knew with that spray, it wasn't like it's not going to bring back vines that were so far gone. It was more for the vines that were, instead of being 30% damage, they might only be 20% or something. It's just supposed to help the ones that still have some life in them to maybe bounce back a little bit quicker. But yeah, we didn't think to like do a little test run at the time because it was a little bit of a scramble.
Right, of course, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Was there? How quick was Cornell's response when that happened? Was it like frost in the morning and then in the afternoon they were like, okay, we got to jump on this. Why don't you guys come out and pick up some of this powder that we've been testing on our own vines?
I think the pickup, I think, was maybe the next day.
Okay, so pretty fast still.
But yeah, I know Cornell, they were out there. There was people, if you knew where to look, like if you were at the vineyards, like there were people driving around like 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. They were just going all around. I know, so in our vineyard, I got there at maybe 10 o'clock in the morning. And a couple of our neighbors from up the road that were growing vines, like they were at the vineyard like half an hour because they were just going to visit all the other vineyards and see how they were doing. And we're like, well, this is how it looks. And they're like, yeah, ours looks better or worse, or people are rightfully so kind of freaking out.
Yeah.
And I know everyone got hit different. It was a very, very much a like microclimate kind of showcase in a terrible way, because you had some spots like us, like we only got like 30% damage, and there's places on I think on Cuca Lake that were total loss.
Yeah,
I think if I remember the stat, I think it was like 65% damage was the average for the whole Finger Lakes. Obviously not good. So we fared a little bit on the better side. Some places definitely fared worse.
wow, yes, and you still had enough harvest to make plenty of wine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, it's really funny with that because our Cazzotelli was the most damaged of all our blocks, and that we were expecting around 4 tons of fruit, and it was the first harvest we were going to get from them this year, which is also like a double whammy. We're like, all right, we're excited about this year. We're going to get our first Cazzotelli, and then the frost. And we're like, wow, this is terrible. I mean, think like a couple weeks after, we're like, okay, like they're coming back a little bit. Like at least we'll get some fruit, and it won't be the end of the world. Maybe we'll make like even if it's like a ton or two, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
And then as the year goes on, hey, they're looking all right. They're looking all right. All right, we might get like 4 tons. All right, cool, 4 tons. That's great. We ended up getting I think a smidge over 6 tons.
Wow.
Of fruit,
Okay.
which was wild. Though technically on the geeky side of our Cazzotelli, they're apparently known to sometimes be a little bit higher producers. I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong, but last I heard, they were as a vine, they have the potential to produce a little more. So we're like, all right, cool. We got smashed our Cazzotelli. We're gonna make a lot of wine out of it. It's gonna be great.
So you're looking forward to this year's harvest then? If last year you thought it was going to be really bad, but you ended up getting more than 6 tons,
right?
Or what are you expecting this year if there's no frost at all?
Right. I mean, if there's no frost, I mean, I'm gonna hope for like 5 because sometimes, because maybe if the 6 tons is overproducing for them, then they might bounce back and they'll be like, all right, we like the vines, as a vine, they're collectively thinking, oh, we made too much fruit, we're gonna make less next year, which is a thing. Like in the overall life cycle, the vines they can definitely, if they overproduce one year, the next year they can sometimes underproduce. I mean, also with viticulture, it's a wonderful thing of like, we think we know what's going to happen, and then something else happens. So who knows? This coming year could be a lower yield, or even like it could be the 4 tons we thought we might get.
Yeah.
Or it could be more.
Well, it is an election year. And for some reason, I don't know why, maybe you can tell me why this is, but for the past like 4 or 5 election years, for a presidential election year, there's just been amazing wine production in the Finger Lakes. Is that a coincidence, or is there something behind that?
I think it could be a little bit of both. I kind of mentioned, like with some of the cycles with the vines, they'll sometimes pull back or push out more depending on how the previous year was. And again, it's also tied to the winter. There's lots of factors, but there'll be a little bit of a cycle. They will sometimes go like almost in like a 2-year cycle where so sometimes it seems like in the Finger Lakes, even years are better than odd years. But then also that ties into the whole, like, what's better? For example, 2020 was one of the best one of the best growing winemaking years the Finger Lakes had seen since, like, 2012 was the most recent that was on similar par. That was great. And then 21, an odd year, super wet, really rainy, especially around harvest. Not very challenging for winemaking side of things. And then 22, while not amazing, because it was a drought year, the fruit that did come out was really, really good. So then the quality goes back up again. But then on the flip side, you'll have vintages like 2017, which that was the year after 2016. That 2016 was another drought year. Really good fruit was coming from that. And so that would almost 2017 got overshadowed by 16. And so people kind of forgot about 17, and then you start opening those 2017 bottles like 3 or 4 years after they were bottled, and you're like, these are actually amazing. So sometimes it's the odd years that are the years that are like delayed gratification.
Oh, okay.
They're like, you forget about it, you think it's kind of not that fun, and then you start opening bottles a little bit later than you might normally, and it's like, whoa, this is actually really good. Like I heard someone was talking about 21 vintage, and they're like, well, when we bottled our 21s, and the first couple months after that, it was not that good. We were not excited about it. And then they opened one like a month ago, and they're like, these are actually really good now. So it's really interesting with the vintages and the cycles of all that. I guess at the end of the day, it boils down to drink wine that you enjoy and just have a good time.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. Maybe more people are thinking about the election year just because it's on the bottom, and then they see 2020 and they're like, oh, that was this president versus this presidential nominee, and maybe it's just stuck in their mind that way, where it's like they think about it a little bit more because it comes up every so often where that was an election year, so it's going to be good.
I have heard that though, which is great. It's funny. Because so it was 2016 was the one beforehand.
2012, 2016, 2020. Now 2024. So who knows? There might be some good things in store for wine this year.
Right. Oh, jeez. It's almost like you never know. It's so, because you'll have, like, I mean, even with 23, like because we're coming off of 21 and 22, like those two, like, completely different years. And we're just like, we want a normal year, please. It doesn't have to be the most amazing fruit. It doesn't have to be the most amazing yield. Just like a normal, an average year, please. And then 23 happened. It was just like the frost, and then we had drought, but then rain, and then it was just all over the place. And it's just like, so again, it's almost like 2024. Please, just a normal year.
Fingers crossed for it.
Right.
Fingers crossed for
and we'll probably have something.
So we're talking about all of the different years and vintages and the weather and things that affect the wine. Let's dive into that a little bit more. What are some of the qualities about Finger Lakes wine region, climate, terroir, that make this area unique?
No, for sure. Yeah. So one of the big things is the lakes themselves, the Finger Lakes, which almost goes into two subcategories. So you have the lakes themselves, which those bodies of water. So when most people think of lakes with association to New York, they think of the big lakes, like Ontario, Lake Erie, dumping a ton of snow on whatever's near them. And so when they think, oh, the Finger Lakes, like that must do the same thing. Well, actually, it does a little of an opposite effect. Since they're smaller but very deep, so especially with like Seneca Lake and Cayuga Lake, those lakes are so deep that they usually, especially these days with climate change, they don't freeze over. So they are soaking up all that energy from the summer, and then they're kind of holding on to it during the winter. So it kind of mitigates the crazy weather patterns that you might get in New York State, makes things a little bit calmer, so the vines can survive better over the whole year in general. But especially the winter. So the lakes themselves help out the vineyards. Then also with the lakes being formed by glaciers, they actually did some different stuff with the soil. So when the glaciers were descending and receding and going back and forth, they stirred all kinds of soils and sediments up. They picked up things from different parts of North America, and dropped it off there, stirred everything up. So the soil here is really diverse, both on like horizontally and vertically. So you can have like a vineyard that is on one side of one lake, and then you can go like 2 miles up the road, and the soil type could potentially be drastically different. Not guaranteed, but potentially drastically different. And then also with vines, they're taproots, so they're going to grow more down than out. So as those vines get older, they can go deeper into the soil, pick up all kinds of different things, and that older vine can potentially have really drastically different flavors, which then, again, helps make more unique wine for the Finger Lakes. So the lakes themselves kind of help make the region better for growing grapes, and then the soil here helps us make more potentially diverse wine, which is fun.
Interesting. So with all of that different climate and terroir, what are some of the grape varietals that are best suited for this area?
So the best grape varietals are varietals that are going to, they want to winter well. They want to have good disease resistance because we do get humidity from the lakes. And then they want to be able to ripen within our growing season window, which is about 6 months. So a lot of the good specific varietals that go well with that. I mean, I'm going to be a little bit biased, but you got ones like Cab Franc and Riesling, of course. Everyone knows those. So they're kind of the two cornerstone grape varietals for the region. Cab Franc because it fits pretty well into our window, and it's got some good cold hardiness. Riesling because it's going to pick up Riesling picks up more on the subtleties with the soil than a number of other varietals. I mean, other ones will as well, but Riesling's with it being known so well, and then that aspect, it really kind of brings it to the forefront. So that's why you see a lot of single vineyard Rieslings around, and it's always fun to try them all out. You could just do like a whole week of just Riesling tastings. And if you try like the same dry Riesling at every single other winery you went to, they could potentially all taste drastically different.
Maybe even more than a week.
Right. Oh, yeah.
You could do it all summer.
Oh, you could do it all summer for sure, for sure. But then you get other varieties like my favorite Lemberger. Lemberger does really well here. I mean, a lot of those like northern France, Germany, Austria, Czech Republic, Hungary, like the northern Italy, like those areas that grow. The grapes that grow there or native to there grow really well in this region. I mean, the list is probably longer than my memory is, but like Lemberger and Zweigelt, Gewürztraminer. I mean, Gewürztraminer isn't as cold hardy as we like, but otherwise it does really well. And then you also get like Georgian varietals, like from the country of Georgia, like Saperavi and Arquetzatelli. They do really well here. Saperavi especially, it's just really good at adapting to where it's grown. They grow it, I mean, in Australia and here, and they're growing that all over. What else? I mean, there's just a lot of good varietals that
and there's also
here.
Like the hybrids too,
right? Oh, for sure.
Can you talk a little bit about what hybrids are, and how do you get them? Like, because I know Cornell works on some, right?
Cornell works on some. There's also a number of other locations in the U.S. that make hybrids as well. Actually, Traminette, which is a hybrid there's a decent amount of it grown around here. It actually doesn't come from Cornell, which is funny because a lot of people think it comes from Cornell, but it actually comes from, I'm pretty sure it's from one of the places out in Champaign or Urbana, Illinois. They do some grape growing out there. Actually, I went out there a few years ago with my fiance, and we had a great time doing a little wine tasting. They do a little bit of the sweeter stuff, but they make it's still good wine. And
is that the only place outside of Champagne, France, that can make an actual champagne?
I've wondered that because it's just called Champagne, Illinois, but I don't know how much sparkling they actually make. I'll have to look that one up.
Right. Anyways.
All right. But so there's a number of other places that make hybrids. So hybrids are they're taking different vines and they're basically breeding them between grafting. They're trying to get different traits from the different vines, and then also a certain flavor profile to get a new vine that has these different characteristics and flavors, but it's a whole new thing. It's like I mentioned Gewürztraminer. It's not very cold hardy, so let's graft it with another cold hardy vine, like maybe Riesling. So we do that, and then we have this new vine, and we're gonna make it as a new thing, and give it a new name. Boom, that's the new vine. Sometimes they'll have to. It can be a very long process because, for example, when you plant a vine, you're not going to get your first harvest till usually that third year. Well, then let's say that's a white vine, you're then going to make a white wine out of it, and that's going to take, let's say, 6 months for that. So, like on average, you're not going to be able to taste that wine until like almost close to 4 years after you planted the vine. So, if that wine doesn't taste how you want it to, and you have to go back and do some more grafting, well, then that takes more time. So, these vines might be under development for like 30, 40, 50 years. Wow. But it's because they're trying to get the product. Right. Now, there is a bit of a, I don't want to say, some people, how do I word this right? They're not huge, they don't want to try hybrids because they're like, oh, it's not vinifera, it's not Riesling, it's not Pinot Noir. We don't want to try hybrids, but
it's like old world thinking.
Right. And hey, again, at the end of the day, whatever wine that you enjoy, go for it. But I would encourage people to try hybrids because they can make delicious wines as well. It's just grafting. They're just like when you make wine, you're kind of experimenting with the wine and doing different blends and all these different things to make a beautiful wine, and it's kind of a similar thing in the very basic sense. It's just on the vineyard side of things.
Yeah.
So that's just as valid as making a wine blend. I mean, I know that Thirsty Owl, they make a dry Vidal, which is absolutely delicious. We don't grow any Vidal. We probably won't, but I know someone that grows some Vidal, and I might, a few years from now, I'd love to start buying fruit from them. They're friends of the family too, so a little connection there, but I might want to start making a dry Vidal because it's delicious. You know,
that's a hybrid.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And then you got hybrids like Cayuga White. one of the first hybrids to come out of Cornell, and the first plantings of it for use of a winery around here was on Cayuga Ridge Winery. They're on Cayuga Lake. They have some of the oldest of all plantings, and it can make some delicious wines. Cayuga White's actually kind of interesting because I'm pretty sure they did this for a reason. So when it's blended, the wine will take on characteristics of what it's blended with. So you got this hybrid grape that does really well in the winter. It's going to produce a lot of fruit. It's going to do a great job at just making fruit and surviving. And so you have your acreage of that, but then maybe you only have like an acre of Pinot Noir, which is really tough to grow here, and it's not, as easy to get that fruit every single year. And you want to make some sparkling out of it. Well, hey, you take that and you blend it with some Cayuga White, and it's gonna taste close to a Pinot Noir sparkling, and it's gonna be delicious. And you're making a good wine that, sure, it's using a hybrid, but it's delicious. So who cares?
And that's what matters, right?
Right.
So it sounds like if it takes so long for these hybrids to actually produce fruit, to figure out if a winery or a vineyard wants to use that fruit, it makes sense that Cornell and maybe FLCC kind of do that research for everybody else.
Oh, right. And they will pair with other wineries in the development process because they got to plant their vines somewhere. I mean, they do have Cornell has their extensions and their vineyards places, but you'll get, especially usually kind of later on, from my understanding, later on in the process, they'll get other wineries to be like, hey, we'll plant some. If you think it's going to be good, we'll help you out, and they'll plant some, and then which is kind of a marketing thing on that winery standpoint, because it's like, hey, we're trying this new grape out, we're making a wine from it, this is fun and exciting, and it's fun too because they'll a lot of the hybrids, when they're still going through development, they don't really have a name. They'll just have like a designation, so either the winery might make up a name for it, or they'll just call it. They might call it like, hybrid 37 or whatever, so it's kind of fun. They can do whatever they want with it. But yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So we talked about the winery scene and what it's like working and collaborating with other vineyards and wineries. We talked about the region. Now I kind of want to switch gears and talk about the Finger Lakes wineries and local restaurants. Can you sort of break down the relationships between the wineries and the restaurants and what that's like?
Yeah, sure. You got to drink wine at restaurants. It's important. I mean, wine is it's really fun because wine goes really well with food. Obviously, wine pairings are a big thing. So there's even that direct relationship with wineries pairing up with restaurants to do even special events. Like I know I've done an event 2 years now with Stone Cat. We're doing a wine pairing dinner with them. And so obviously you'll get that kind of event going on pretty often with wineries, which is really fun. Because wine's really fun because you can taste it and then you can eat something and you can taste it again and it tastes drastically different and enhances or contrasts with the meal, all that stuff. Obviously really fun. But also it helps kind of, especially at least from my viewpoint with being a new winery, it helps get our name out there kind of in a different way than we might not normally. But if I get my wine in a restaurant, they're pouring that by the glass, they're having people taste that they might not normally know of my winery already.
Right. How do you think about the distribution? Because I hear like there's some difficulties with restaurants and the distribute that they use, or bars, the distributor they use to get their spirits, their wines, their beers, and things like that. It might be difficult, from what I hear, for new wineries and vineyards to get into some of those restaurants because of the regulations that are around certain distributors. How do you think about that?
Right. It can definitely be a hurdle. It can be a challenge for sure. Thankfully, there's a number of restaurants around the Finger Lakes that are like, hey, we love having Finger Lakes product in here, so they kind of go out of their way to get Finger Lakes product in. So always grateful for all those places that do that. But that being said, most restaurants, especially a number of restaurants, the bigger ones, they will usually work with a distributor to get their product. And to be, it can take a lot of work to just to pair up with a distributor, because a lot of times, not every time, but a lot of times the distributors are looking for a certain amount of product and a certain quality of product consistently.
From the wineries.
Yeah, from the wineries.
Okay.
It's like, well, we want, at least a pallet of wine every year and that's probably on the low end. Like, but let's say like we just want a pallet of wine every year, and it wants to be the same kind of thing every single time. We don't want to change because, we want to have that available to their customers then. So then those restaurants know what they're getting. It's a whole thing, which like I get where that comes from. But it could be really tough for smaller wineries that are just starting off, where it's like, hey, we're just starting. Like, we don't have. I mean, I got like my biggest lot was maybe 200 cases, so we're talking like 3 pallets. I mean, a little more than 3 pallets, but that's a lot. But I also have I made some Cab Sauv that's just 40 cases of that. Like that's not going to go to a distributor. Thankfully, with the farm winery license, that allows us to self-distribute. So we do have all the forms and paperwork that we can go, and we can go to any restaurant. And if they want to do it, again, it's if they want to do it, because again, some restaurant policy is they're only working through the distributor,
right?
And that's all they have is what the distributor has to offer to them. Again, that makes it hard for smaller places. It basically shuts some doors to them, because and I see how that's valid on that restaurant side of things. They just want to worry with that. Like, it's less things to worry about.
Set it and forget it.
Right. Like, here's the list that our distributor gives us. We'll pick from that list. We're good to go. But it does make it difficult for us because, like, we're not working with a distributor. I don't know. I mean, at some point, sure, I'd love to make a connection with a distributor and get something figured out. But again, like, that'll be a whole other thing. And until then, that could be years from now, and I'm the one driving to Rochester dropping off wine or whatever. You know? Which I don't mind. I mean, I love that because there's some benefits to that in the sense of it can add more of a connection with the places that do have our wines available, because then, like, I'm the one dropping off the wine, or maybe my brother or whatever, but part of the family's dropping off the wine.
Right.
And if they want, I can swing by for anything, like we can do something, There's a place we just got our wine up in, a place in Rochester called Red, White, and Brew. They're a little wine bar. They're not a restaurant, but they're a little kind of wine bar thing. And like he does, I think it's like the first Friday of every month, he does a little tasting thing. So some of the places that he has, their wine, beer, whatever, they can come and do a tasting at his location. So then the customers can meet the people that actually have the wine. So, on that flip side, there are some good things about it where it's like, hey, there's more of those connections. But yeah, when we're trying to actually get more product out there, the big distributors can kind of overshadow a lot of the smaller people that are just trying to make a family business to survive.
Yeah. Yeah. But from what we were talking about on Friday, just in regular conversation at Airy Acres there, it seems like you have some pretty scrappy techniques to get your wine into some of these local restaurants and venues. You mentioned having wine on tap and putting wine in kegs. Can you kind of expand on the value of offering wine in kegs and sort of bringing it to restaurants or venues to have them have your wine on tap?
Right. So one of the reasons that kind of came up was, so when I was visiting places, different like bars and restaurants, they're like, well, so for a number of places, depending on their clientele, they might not pour through a full like 750 milliliter bottle of wine a weekend or whatever before it goes bad. So they're like, we're only going to do wine in like smaller bottles, like 500 milliliter or smaller, or on the off chance that somebody has it in a keg, we'll do that because that way they're not wasting as much, which makes sense, So I ran into that enough times that I went to my dad. I'm like, Dad, we should keg some wine. And then actually, so we make a couple forced carbonated wines, some bubbly wines. We call them it's our Glide series. We have the first Glide was Gewürztraminer, and then we have a Rosé, and then we're going to make a Riesling. And so those ones we take the wine up to Montezuma on the north end of Cayuga Lake, and they have the forced carbonation system all there. And I talked to Phil. I'm like, hey, can you guys like carbonate it and then put it in a keg? He's like, yeah, of course. So I'm like, well, this is going to be a fun way to like get in with places that might not be able to have wines available because of that whole waste aspect. But then also it's the added bonus that we're going to do it with a bubbly wine. And most anybody that's opened a bottle of bubbly wine knows that you got to basically drink it within 24 hours or sooner because those bubbles are going to go away, and that's half the fun. So with it being in a keg, just like beer, you attach a keg of beer to your system, like that's going to last for a bit. It's not going to, bubbles aren't going to go away. You're good. So having that, so it's not only is the wine in kegs, but it's also going to be sparkling wine in kegs. So it's going to be able to potentially have a restaurant, a bar, brewery, have that selection available for their customers and have it stay fresh. So yeah.
That's awesome. I'm so excited to kind of go to these places around the Finger Lakes and see Airy Acres wine on tap. Mm-hmm. I can't wait to try it.
I can't wait for people to have it now.
Yes.
Yeah, we're starting off with, 20 kegs to get started, and if it's popular, we'll go from there.
I love it. That's amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Noah. I appreciate you spending the time. I kind of want to finish off with this softball question for you and end out on a high note. What is the best thing about Finger Lakes wine?
Oh, best thing?
Yeah.
There's so many good things about Finger Lakes wine. So I'm going to say, so I really like Finger Lakes wine. I'm obviously biased because I'm here, so
right.
I'm drinking it all the time.
Yeah.
But I love it because Finger Lakes wine, with it, especially like with the reds, like, yeah, they're medium-bodied reds. It's just, Finger Lakes wine is really drinkable and really food-friendly. Like, I love Lemberger, and Lemberger is normally very food-friendly, but it also can stand on its own, so you can have a glass with dinner and then 3 glasses afterwards, It's just good. It's just good to go. Whatever you need it for.
Yes.
It's good to go. And also one of the interesting things too is, so Finger Lakes wine, with it being in a cool climate, usually the alcohol level is a little bit lower.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of a trend going with the alcohol industry of low alcohol wines. And so technically a decent amount of Finger Lakes wines are already low alcohol wines, because like especially after 2021, or the 2021 vintage was lower in sugar, so it was making lower alcohol wines. So you got these Rieslings that are like 10%. It's like, well, that's a low alcohol wine. We're already there. So again, it's just flexibility with it. I mean, there's a lot of great things about Finger Lakes wine. I mean, with the industry in general, I talked to you about the camaraderie and everyone helps everybody.
Yes.
That's another great thing that's really unique with the region. I could talk about the great things about Finger Lakes and the wine for a long time.
I love it. There's a lot going on here, and it's so exciting. I'm glad that you're a part of it, and I look forward to visiting Airy Acres several times this summer. And everybody listening and watching should definitely check out Airy Acres Vineyard. The new tasting room is going to be done soon. There's going to be events all summer long. We got links to Airy Acres in the description. Noah, thank you so much for joining us today. Wishing you the best and looking forward to everything that comes out of Airy Acres for years to come.
Thanks for letting me come. Yeah, happy to be here.